Welcome back to NBA Today. So Russell Westbrook spoke to Adrian Wojnarowski last night. And Woj reaction to getting pulled. And he said, quote, surprised, yes, I was disappointed I didn't go back in, but I'm more disappointed that we lost the damn game. I want to be able to be on the floor to help my teammates and be able to help our team win in games like that. But that was a decision that was made. So bringing in NBA reporter Dave McMenamin, who covers the Lakers for us. So as we look beyond the immediate aftermath of Russell Westbrook's benching here, you're in Orlando today with the team. What's the Lakers' mindset as they prepare to face the Magic tonight?
And Malika, a source told me that Russell Westbrook this morning at team meetings was, quote, friendly and smiling as usual. So it doesn't seem there's any lingering effects in terms of him carrying over any disappointment from being benched against Indiana into the start of this road trip. It's going to come down to execution and getting better quality play out of Russell Westbrook in the minutes he's on the floor. Now, prior to that big dramatic moment, not playing down the stretch against Indiana, the rotation has been tweaked slightly in recent games in order to get some more minutes, some more touch for Taylor Horton-Tucker, get the ball out of Russell Westbrook's hands a little bit, give him some more break, try to have him to have a full head of steam when he's on the court. Taylor Horton-Tucker has used those minutes wisely. He's averaging 15.5 points over his last two games. That's one way they can get this thing going, infuse this team with the young talent that they have. We're talking all year how old the Lakers are. Well, they still have Taylor Horton-Tucker, Malik Monk. They're hoping to get Kendrick Nunn back. There are some young, effective players on this roster.
And you've covered LeBron on countless road trips. What does he prioritize with his teams while on the road?
Malik, it's been all about the hang. Going out to dinners. If there's a guy having an event, half the roster ends up there. When the team was in New York earlier in the year, they all went to see Dave Chappelle. They have an off night on Saturday night in Miami, but guess what? They get Friday night in Miami too, because after they finish the game against Orlando tonight, they're going to go down the coast to Miami. And then you also have an off night in New York later on this trip. Those are the opportunities where, LeBron will organize a dinner. Randy Mims, who's in his longtime friendship crew, he'll be the one organizing those dinners on the road. And they'll break bread, they'll pop over a couple of bottles of wine, talk about the season, talk about where their lives are off the court. And those are the little connective tissue type moments that help a team when they're down in the trenches later on. Absolutely, especially at this time of year. Dave McMenamin, thank you so much. Have fun at the game later. I want to bring this back to the panel now a little bit to talk about Dave's reporting. Richard, you played with LeBron and went on several road trips with him. How important, though, are those sorts of dinners and this and that, especially coming off of the drama they have over the last several days?
Yeah, and Perk, look, Perk played with, KG and all these guys. You can't win a championship, and that's what they're talking about, without a very connected group. You have to be locked in on the court, off the court. I have to be able to trust in you. You have to be able to trust in me. And a lot of times when you're at home, you're spending so much time with your family, understandably. You go to practice, you come home. But when you're on the road, that is the time for camaraderie. And look, Bron is a huge camaraderie guy. But I don't know how much dinners and camaraderie is going to help this team. There are actual structural issues with this team that I have not, unless they're going to the Last Supper with Jesus. I don't know. I don't know what dinner they're going to go to that's going to help.
Saying Red Lobster is not going to cut it.
No.
Not even those cheesy biscuits.
Not even the cheesy biscuits ain't going to get that done.
Oh man,
I love cheesy biscuits.
Perk started sweating when I said cheesy biscuits.
Leave him alone.
Perk started sweating. He's like, somebody said cheesy biscuits.
Leave this man alone.
I'm not in no mood for you today. I'm not. I swear I'm not. Yeah. Look, I mean, you can have all the come to Jesus meetings, go to dinners, or whatever the case may be, but still in all, you got to be willing to sacrifice when you get between those lines. Mm-hmm. And it starts with Braun. I'm going to piggyback with what Richard said earlier. AD has to be the focal point. Like, you ran the offense through AD when they won it. It has to be that when he gets back.
But Richard said literally the whole panel agreed. You all agreed that it's not like that is Jesus coming to the supper when he returns, Shanae.
I think that the Lakers, when they play perfectly, everyone available, yeah, they have a chance. But this ain't no perfect world, unfortunately. That's what we're seeing so far through
We
their
know
play.
It's not a perfect world because we have a goodbye to say. Coming up on NBA Today, Westbrook's first comments on his late-game benching. Woj is here, and he has all the details. And there was no W to be found in the Warriors last night. Why Shanae thinks you can blame last night's L on some porous defense. And Daryl Morey's must-hear comments on the Simmons trade talks. Plus, a look at the Nets since Kyrie's return. NBA Today starts right now. Happy Friday, everybody. Let's finish this week off strong. I'm Malika Andrews, joined by Richard Jefferson, if he ever gets off his phone. Kendrick
get off your phone, Richard.
Today, Agumake.
Oh, we're on
and
television?
usually it's you on your phone. Senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski. And Woj had an exclusive interview with Russell Westbrook last night that we're going to unpack. But before we do that, I want to set the scene here a little bit. So Russ was benched, remember, with under 4 minutes to play in Wednesday's loss to the Pacers. And Westbrook was 5 of 17 from the field when Frank Vogel pulled him from the game. And it wasn't just poor shooting that got Russ removed. It was a lack of effort on defense. And after being pulled, Westbrook eventually left the court with 8.4 seconds on the clock. And then he didn't speak to reporters afterwards. But as mentioned, he spoke to Woj last night. So Woj, what did he tell you specifically about the benching?
Well, he was surprised by it. He was disappointed by it. He wasn't happy with it, but he accepted it. And that Frank Vogel made a decision, and he's ready to move on from it. And listen, he understands, Russell Westbrook, that he has got to figure out, along with the Lakers, about how he's going to play with this team. And I think for him, he believes he has really worked with the organization, with Vogel, about how to find a fit. And I think for him, I think he knows people expect that they might hear a defiant Russell Westbrook, who's going to say, I'm going to do it my way. That's not what he's doing. He understands that for him, his fourth team in 4 years, it is taking time for him to figure out how he fits. And I think more than anything, he's hoping for patience from people, that they'll get Anthony Davis back, that he'll get more time on the court with LeBron James and AD, and that they're going to find a pathway here to some success.
Well, and folks just saw at home that full screen of exactly what Russell Westbrook said to Adrian Wojnarowski, which was in part that he was surprised, like you mentioned, not necessarily just disappointed, but disappointed more in the loss that he had. But Perk, we heard Richard's giggles. What's your reaction to how Russell Westbrook handled this benching?
He's going to handle it like a true professional. But here's the thing. The word patience is just not going to happen. You're in Los Angeles. It's pressure. That's the word that starts with the letter P that he has to realize. And he knew that coming into this. Here's the thing. Forget me being the analyst right now. I'm looking at Russ as my brother. I had dinner with his mom and dad 2 nights ago. And right now, my dog seems a little broken. I don't see the same swagger. I don't see the same intensity. When you listen to him in his post-game interviews, it's just not the same. I don't see the same aggression. It's something not right. It's something for his mentality. I don't know if it's all the way there in basketball or is he focusing on other things in life, because it comes a point of time as an NBA player that basketball don't mean everything to you. And I'm not saying it as a bad way, but you start to have a transition in life. And when I hear Russ talk now, and when I hear him say things like it's more to life than just basketball, that's not the same Russ that I know that used to have this killer mentality, that wanted to go out there and play with passion, play every minute, every second. And right now, I just feel like my brother is broken and he need to get his swagger back. And the way to get it right for him is for all the guys, the coaches, the players to rally around him in the locker room and uplift him at this moment. And then you could get his swagger back.
Well, and there was just so much that was in this interview with Adrian Wojnarowski. One of the things he talked about was accepting his role. But another thing that he mentioned, we've talked a lot about this on the show with you this week in your reporting, Woj, is Frank Vogel. So Russell Westbrook's relationship with Frank Vogel, did he touch on that at all?
Well, what he's talked about is what Frank Vogel has asked of him, he said, has changed, evolved as personnel has evolved on the court, just like a lot of teams. They've had players in and out. AD's been out with an injury, COVID. And so, Russell Westbrook's focus is on trying to work with Vogel, the coaching staff, to figure it out. And listen, he's drawing on the fact that he had to do that last year in Washington. You saw a team that played much better in the second half. In Houston, they played much better late in that season, and he had an injury in the bubble that might have derailed them. They were playing well. He was playing well there, and that he's going to figure it out, that history tells him that he is. And I think with Frank Vogel, and I think for Westbrook, it's he understands he's going to be judged on winning with the Lakers, and that's how you are judged in LA. Not about stats, and it's not about numbers. And listen, I think he understands. I think it's very clear to him that he's got to find a way to complement LeBron James, AD, and I think for him, getting AD back on the floor, getting the three of them there together, and hopefully AD's back by the end of the month, they can really start speeding up that process.
Richard, what are you seeing from the way Frank Vogel is coaching Russell Westbrook and their relationship there?
Well, I think he's trying to figure it out. And Russ, he was talking about he didn't really understand it, but, he supports. And cooperation is not a prerequisite for comprehend. You don't have to comprehend something in order to cooperate. Excuse me. And so my point is, just because he doesn't understand doesn't mean he's not going to cooperate. And to Woj says he's doing every single thing that the Lakers are asking of him. The only issue is that every single thing that the Lakers are trying. I remember at the beginning of the season, they were playing Rondo and him. And then they were like, okay, no, that's not going to work. And then they completely stopped playing Rondo. A lot of it was because of the injuries. But I think right now, when I look at Russell, I think to Perk's point, he is a person that's trying to figure it out. And he is an elite superstar in this league. He is a former MVP that is on his fourth team in 4 years, and the first 40 games have not gone well. But for anybody to question Frank Vogel for sitting someone the last 4 minutes that was 5 for 17, and he's done that, let's see, he's probably had 10, 12 games like that. And so for Frank to be like, okay, listen, just sit for the next 5 minutes. Let's see if we can figure this out. Let's see if we can do it. That's what you need to do. Frank is judged by winning. It's not just by coaching Russell and how his relationship is with Russell. His job is to coach the entire team and to coach the Lakers.
Well, we did hear him in his interview with you, Adrian, take some accountability, right, for how things are going. What did he say about riding out these tough times, though?
Well, he's been through this. And again, you look at his career and the consistency he had in Oklahoma City, and, Perk knows this. It was an organization that was run, very consistently year after year. And all of a sudden, he goes to a Houston team that was really a polar opposite of OKC, more freewheeling, more player-driven, run by James Harden, to Washington last year with a lot of injuries earlier. And then he and Bradley Beal, pull that team out of the basement of the East to get them toward the postseason. And so it takes time. And I think for him, he's just hoping, listen, he's hoping that this can be what they all dreamed it would, which would be a championship contender. He knows that's all you're judged on in LA. Whether this team's going to be good enough or not, we can argue that. I think this team's got a lot of structural obstacles to keep it from putting it at the very top. But I think there's still a belief with a healthy LeBron James and a healthy Anthony Davis in the postseason. I think there's still a belief with Russell Westbrook that he can play a role with them, that they could still be a very dangerous team in the spring.
But basketball-wise, right? Can Shanae? Can they?
Yeah, and expanding on what Woj was saying, I know we've mentioned it, 4 teams in 4 years, but it's also the team that you join now has 12 new players, and that's the Lakers, and so it's a confluence of that. But when you talk about strategically with basketball, I've been saying this ad nauseum. This Lakers team, their identity is not just LeBron James being consistent or Anthony Davis being out there and, playing to his best ability. It's playing defense. That's their heart and soul. When they won a championship, they had the 3rd best defense. Last year, they were number 1 in defensive rating. That's their identity. And I think sometimes after you win that championship, you're like, okay, let's figure out how we can manage to be ready at the end of the season. Right now, you need to learn how to integrate those important aspects like defense so that when AD comes back, it's like, all right, now we're even stronger than when we were before. But instead, it seems to me that they're going to rely on AD to keep them from being the team that's 5th worst on defense right now. And also, they allow the 6th most amount of points in the paint. That's all on you, AD. So I think it's a collective reset. It's not just on Russell Westbrook.
Well, and as our Dave McMenamin has been reporting, they hope that AD can come back on this road trip. But Russ said it to you. He knows that in LA, it's about championship or bust, right, Woj? So, Perk, do you believe, as currently constructed, this team can win a championship?
No, I don't. Not when I'm looking at Golden State, the Phoenix Suns, those teams in particular. And then you look at upcoming teams like, my Memphis Grizzlies team, the Dark
You had to go there.
But I just can't see it. I mean, it's going to have to be some drastic changes. They're going to have a coming to Jesus meeting. See, here's the problem, right? You have a guy like Carmelo Anthony, right? Been out the league for 2 years, great story, comes back in, show the world he still could play. We all know he could get buckets. Okay, then he leaves the Portland Trail Blazers. He joined the Lakers. Now he's a fan favorite. Everybody's cheering Melo when he's at the Crypto.com center. Okay, let me get that right.
Thank you.
But the problem is that he's so much of a liability on the defensive end. You know, like he's really, really, really bad. And so when you look at a guy like Malik Monk, who was balling while Melo was out, and then Melo comes back, and all of a sudden it affects Malik Monk, this is when you got to come to the round table. And this is the problem that the Lakers really has had this entire season is the word sacrifice.
Yes.
And that's disturbing to have that problem with a group of veterans.
But isn't there a point where you need a hierarchy reset? Like, who is your primary option? I agree with you. LeBron James as point guard is the best, decision you can make. I think, when LeBron went to Miami, it was like those difficult conversations they were having. All right, D-Wade, you got to let LeBron rock. Chris Bosh, you've got to hold it down. Like, there was a hierarchy reset. I don't see that happening with the Lakers, and it's largely due to their inability to have the big three out there. LeBron James mistimed early. Now AD is missing time. They don't have that time to figure things out, like, while we're evaluating Russ. And I think that's why moving forward, maybe this is the moment where they get it all together.
No, it's not. It's not going to happen. But let me explain this. Look, if I can make Woj laugh, look, guys, if you can make Woj laugh on television, then it's a win for today. But hear me out. This is the biggest thing for the Lakers and where they are right now. They're missing Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis.
That's what I just said.
Stay with me here, sister.
Okay, I'll try.
They're missing Anthony Davis, okay? And Anthony Davis is one of the best players in this league. And there is nobody on this panel that thinks when Anthony Davis comes back, everything's going to be fine. Because why? Because they weren't fine prior to that. They were struggling to figure it out. So what about Anthony Davis, who is a top 5 talent in this league? Everyone says all the potential. When he shows up, it's not like, okay, our defense is going to be back. We got our post guy. Anthony Davis is going to go 25 and 14. Nothing about Anthony Davis this year or in the last year and a half has said he's going to be a huge difference maker on this roster.
But you can see what Russell Westbrook said to Woj at the bottom of your screen there. We have a legitimate chance to be able to win it all, and to do that, I have to be better. So it starts with the accountability that he is taking to our own Adrian Wojnarowski, and then getting the piece about the Suns' backcourt of Devin Booker and Chris Paul, who combined for 48 points in the win. So here's Booker in the game.
We all trust each other, and we had the experience. We had a lot of learning curves last year, but having that time and that experience together, I think, I know put us in a situation where, we never hit the panic button. We never get flustered or out of whack. We just stick to what we do, and, we perform well down the stretch.
So I'm here with Mr. Arizona himself, the alpha male who is furiously taking notes over there. So, Richard Jefferson.
Yes.
The Suns.
Yes.
Are they the most complete team in the NBA right now?
Yes, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I was doing my homework right before class, just like everybody else. But I had the stats. I wanted to make sure it was on the paper. Listen,
Arizona kid.
I know, but look, I'm talking about Arizona. This is how we do it out there. The Phoenix Suns are by far the most efficient, and they are the most complete team. Let me just wheel down some stats. Here we go. First in clutch winning percentage. They're first in clutch field goals. They're second in defensive efficiency. They're second in field goal percentage. They're third in points per game. They're fifth in assists. What stat do you not want this team to be top 5 in? This Phoenix Suns team is by far the most complete team in the NBA when you look at top to bottom. Where do they have deficiencies? They don't. Does that mean that they're going to win a championship? Does that mean that they're favored to win a championship? No. But they are by far the most complete team, and they've been playing that way all year long.
Well, and if you're going on reliability, you might want to say that they could be the team to come out of the West yet again. You can't disrespect them.
I'm not disrespecting. I'm giving you all the stats.
This is the reason to respect them. So let's stick in the West. And let's go to the Bay, where I'll join someone else who reps the Yay area, although definitely not as hard as I do. Miss Chiney Agumake.
Come on.
I mean, Stanford.
Thank you,
yeah, All right. Late in the fourth quarter, Warriors are up by 3. Justin Holiday. Things just were not going well for them thus far. So Justin Holiday, this is late in the game. Look at this. Comes in, knocks in a 3. That sends the game into overtime, and then things didn't get better for the Warriors from there. Andre Iguodala with the turnover. Chris Duarte finishes the layup. That was 2 of his 27 points, and Golden State had 21 turnovers. Here's Steve Kerr.
I blame myself, number one. I didn't think I did a good job preparing the team to be ready to play. The 3-point shot that tied it. I'm normally a fouler, and I'd take the hit on that one too. So this was my night to stink it up.
I know there's that conversation, should we have fouled and all that. I was just a step slow on that one, gave him, too wide open of a look. They're trying to guard the inbounds, and I got caught looking.
All right, Chiney, so you heard Steve Kerr talking about the end of regulation there, that 3. What did you see on that play?
This is why practicing end-of-game scenarios and also talking through them in timeouts matter. Watch this right here. You're up 3, you usually foul, and you want to get the worst free throw shooter the ball, which maybe that's the idea here, but instead, 2 committed, Steph Curry, and guess what? The biggest shot probably of his career knocked down right there. They doubled the ball instead of stopping the clock, fouling, forcing them to shoot 2 free throws and stay up 1. That's a no-no.
Well, and Chiney, the Warriors, they host the Rockets tonight. But remember, they're going to be a little bit of short-handed tonight. I appreciate you because no Clay for the Dubs. He's still sitting out one of the games of back-to-backs. But let's keep it moving. I want to go to my favorite city, New York City, and the Mecca, where we had a little homecoming action last night. So Pelicans guard Jose Alvarado, he was born in Brooklyn, and he went to high school at Christ the King in Queens, which is 7-ish miles from Madison Square Garden. And the rookie had a career night against his hometown team, finishing with 13 points, and he had the Pels. And they may have had home court advantage last night as the Garden faithful, their boos rained down on the Knicks throughout the game.
Just seeing my parents, with my jerseys and all the folks that came out to see me, man, it means a lot. Like, if you would have told me this, it happened 5 years ago, I wouldn't believe it. But now that it's just like a dream come true. And, it's crazy. I'm at the Garden now, and I'm doing an interview with y'all. And my people's is right there. Like that? You can't make that up. And, man, it's just a great win for us. And I'm just so happy, man. Y'all don't understand how happy I am.
20 friends and family members, both at the Brooklyn game and tonight. Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram picking up the tab for those tickets. What does that type of loyalty and teammateship mean to you?
They bought tickets for me, for my family. Like, you can't make this up. Those are great teammates. Not just a teammate, they're just a brother to me. And for them to just do that for me, I'm grateful, and I appreciate all that. And B.I. just gave my little brother his jersey. He a big fan of him. And, man, I can't. Those are my brothers. They did a lot for me, and, man, it's crazy. You're going to make me cry over here.
It was really like 6-on-5 out there, honestly, just because, they were frustrated. They were missing shots, doing all that. The crowd was frustrated. So the crowd was booing them and doing all that. The fans weren't on our side, but they just weren't on their side either.
That was, I think, Perk, one of the best interviews I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
Just the joy radiating out of that young man, the gestures from his teammates offering to paying for his family and friends to be there. I mean, that was awesome. But then on the other side, a little less awesome for the Knicks. They've lost 3 in a row. Fans are turning on the team. I was saying that they were booing them intermittently throughout the game. And Julius Randle, he hasn't talked to reporters after games since January 6th. And the team was fined $25,000 for that today because it is a violation of what they have bargained with the league. But what's the biggest issue with this team right now?
The biggest issue of issues, because it's a lot of them. And the number one thing is this. Julius Randle, listen, my Texas boy, you get paid the big bucks. You're a franchise guy. See, here's the problem that I have. A lot of guys want to run to the table and talk to the media when they have good games. You have to keep that same energy when you have bad games. But here's the real thing. I honestly think that Julius Randle and the New York Knicks has ran its course. And if I'm the New York Knicks, I actually would consider or test the waters of trading Julius Randle before his stock goes down to get back some type of pieces, picks, or whatever the case may be. But I don't think there's no repairing this relationship at this moment.
Well, when you set the standard as the most improved player, New York Knicks fans, they got a taste last year. They got excited last year. And here's the thing, Perk. The Knicks schedule, it gets pretty tough. Here are their next 10 games. You can see them. They have to face the Heat, the Lakers, the Jazz, the Nuggets, the Warriors on February 10th. That's the day of the trade deadline. Yet found another trade offer to meet their demands of a top 30 player in return. Based on the recent play of Joel Embiid, however, Daryl Morey might be lowering those demands a little bit.
When you talk about skill set, 0 flaws on the offensive end, it's nothing that this man can't do. He can take you on the low block. He got the one-leg dirt, sidestep three-point shot. He can handle the rock, Euro step down the lane, finish, and one through contact. I'm going with Joel Embiid.
We are now joined by the president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey. Is your phone ringing extra these days?
We are looking for a deal that makes us a championship contender. For Joel, we have to make sure we get this right. Joel is playing so amazing that Now we might be able to do it with a top 40 player who's a great fit. A lot of frustrated teams out there. I would put us in the frustrated camp. Look, we've had conversations with pretty much every team in the league.
How did this thing with Ben unravel out of control?
It's very surprising to me. Everyone, I think, needs to look in the mirror. This is not a good situation.
Like, by the trading deadline, what kind of percentage do you think that you can make a deal?
I think it's less likely than likely. It won't be from lack of trying. It's all we're working on.
All right, that was a lot. So for more on Simmons and the Sixers, I'd like to welcome in senior NBA insider Ramona Shelburne. So Ramona, Joel Embiid, he's been playing at an MVP level, right? So how does Joel's play affect how Daryl Morey and the Sixers are thinking about this whole Simmons situation?
Well, there's a lot of people in Philadelphia right now that say you cannot waste this Joel Embiid's year. I mean, he is playing the best basketball of his career right now. The game has slowed down for him. He's in full command of his powers. He's playing so good. It feels wrong to not get him some more help and have a guy like Ben Simmons taking up all that room on your salary cap and not get a return for it. The other way that people are looking at it, and I think this is what Daryl Morey was trying to say, is we can't take nothing for Ben Simmons. We have to get Joel a player that can elevate him and the Sixers back into championship contention. And so we can't shortchange Joel in the return we get for this trade. I think that was the purpose of that interview, is to manage expectations and say, hey, listen, he's having a historically great year. But we will make sure we have to get this trade right. We can't just make a trade just to make a trade.
Well, especially when you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference this year over the last handful of years, it has just gotten stronger. The Bucks, the Nets, obviously the Raptors were the champions coming out of there. The Heat, the list goes on and on there. But this was one of those interviews that Daryl Morey gave that just made your eyes get a little bit bigger every time he kept talking. So
I was like, did he forget he's on the radio?
So what else stood out to you in this interview?
Malika, did you catch the part where he says there is a trade with Sacramento that we would do? I was like, oh, that was an interesting admission. And they've had obviously conversations with a lot of teams around the league. They don't have a trade necessarily that they are serious about right now. And I think the managing of expectations was the quote where he essentially says it's more likely than not that we don't do a trade before this February 10th deadline. In other words, we may not make a trade.
Right.
This may go on all year.
Right.
Prepare yourselves. However, there is a trade that, he said it in his own words, which I was kind of startled to hear publicly. And I think that trade would revolve around Halliburton. That is a player that they really like. And I think so far, Sacramento has not been willing to do that. But there's also, it's not a one-for-one deal. This is very complicated, would likely involve 3 teams. But Sacramento has some interesting pieces in the shooting that they have with Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, draft assets. And I think that there's been a couple of teams that have been more seriously engaged with the Sixers. If there was something to move there, it would likely be from Sacramento or Indiana or Minnesota. But that was an interesting admission. Have you ever heard a GM say that like that?
Right.
There's a trade with that team.
That was
specifically
very clear and very specific. And guess what? The February 10th trade deadline, it is inching closer. Thank you so much, Ramona.
Thanks,
I really
Malika.
appreciate your time. We can't talk about Ben Simmons being traded, though, and not have a little bit of fun, right, on where he might end up. So for more on that, I do want to bring in our front office insider, Bobby Marks. Bobby, welcome. Thanks for being here. Daryl Morey, he mentioned a top 40 player in return. What would the best trade for Philadelphia be involving a top 40 player, Bobby?
Yeah, Malika, it's the process of elimination. I think there's 2 top 40 players that are available. The first would be Jeremy Grant of the Pistons. The problem here is that Detroit owes Oklahoma City a protected first-round pick in the next 7 years. So are they willing to kind of amend that protection and give multiple lottery picks? I think, Malika, it all goes back to Indiana. I think if you're looking at best available player, not best fit, it centers around Domantas Sabonis. So I'm looking at a Sabonis, Karis LeVert, future first-round pick. For me, that's the best available deal out there. And hey, maybe Philadelphia takes that first-round pick. You move Tobias Harris. That opens up cap space for this summer potentially. And we all know who that marquee player out there, the Nets, James Harden.
Well, Domantas Sabonis, certainly interesting. And Karis LeVert, if he plays like he played against the Lakers the other night, that makes that even more intriguing. Bobby Marks, thank you so much for your time. We will be seeing much more of you as we get closer to that February 10th trade deadline. Really appreciate it. I do want to bring in, though, Richard Jefferson here because, Richard, I know, please, will you put on your GM hat for me? Would you make that trade with the Pacers?
Look, some players is better than no players. And currently right now they have no players. They have no one filling in that role. Now, what Bobby said is true. Is that the best fit, right? Having Sabonis, who I think is a great player, but I just don't know if Sabonis fits perfectly with Joel Embiid. That was the thing about Ben Simmons and Joel. It was outside. It was inside. You had defensive presence on the perimeter 1 through 5 with Ben Simmons being so great. When you talk about the Sacramento Kings, like Ramona said, when she was like, well, there is a deal that they would do. A lot of times, and I'll go back to the Washington trade that they did with the Lakers. Remember